Hello, everyone. There may still be some guys trying to join here, but for the sake of time, it's best that we kick it off. So in today's session, we will go over some topics around IT automation, how to get started, why it's important, how we at Conscia deliver services around this, and go over a business case, and hopefully some potential next steps for you and your organizations as well. We will keep the meeting open at the end if there are any questions, and if we have time. During the call, we will also take a couple of polls in the beginning of the slides, and it would be great if you would answer those so that we can verify that we are on the right track, hopefully. The webinar will be recorded, as you noticed perhaps by the symbol. So you can review this webinar afterwards, share it with colleagues, and discuss it, of course. Also take a note to stick around until the end and fill out the assessment. Then you're in for a chance to win a 2-hour free workshop with us. So briefly describe your organization's challenges in terms of automation and what you would like Conscia to help you with, and we'll select a happy winner there. So let's kick it off. So here we go. Why IT automation is important then for an organization. So IT automation is a solution for organizations struggling with the challenges of maintaining daily operations while also facing pressures to expand their teams. Despite the addition perhaps of new team members, many IT departments still find themselves working overtime with the same tasks and tickets and so on. Add to this the expectation that you many times receive from senior management or the executive board to work more proactively, take on new strategic projects that are usually time-consuming, while the reality is that the IT team can many times be overwhelmed, overworked, and struggling to stay afloat. And on top of this, an increased level of security threats, more stringent, more stringent compliancy and regulation requirements, and it can really be a perfect storm out there. So hopefully there is a poll now where you can sort of show us what's on top of your agenda out there. I'm able to see that poll now, Matthijs, but hopefully here we go. Just to give us an idea if we're heading in the right direction, if you will. So take your time and fill that out, and I'll just move on for the time being. So why do we feel automation is the solution then? The adoption of IT automation can significantly reduce the time spent by teams on small cumbersome tasks such as, for example, onboarding new devices and resources, software and users. IT automation also reduces human errors by enabling a consistent workflow execution, enhancing reliability and operations overall. It boosts many times employee satisfaction by allowing IT teams to focus on more engaging projects, preventing burnout and contributing to the organization's overall strategic goals. Additionally, automation improves the user experience by providing better support and increasing that end user satisfaction. It also offers obviously cost-saving benefits by eliminating these manual tasks and freeing the organization and IT managers to allocate resources more efficiently. But many times, there can be some roadblocks to get started, because otherwise, why aren't everyone doing this? You might think, right? And overcoming these roadblocks requires, a bit of a strategic approach. You need to secure executive buy-in by highlighting how automation enhances IT operations and the overall budget. And that's essential. Articulating somehow, a return on investment from automation tools and processes is also key. You need to be looking at, addressing the potential lack of automation skills through training the IT team, and with external support from special partners such as us when needed, of course. Starting automation efforts with high volume or time-consuming tasks that can be simplified helps to demonstrate an immediate benefit. Tackling the continuous problem-solving cycle and non-stop firefighting with early automation integration can alleviate many issues. But standardization is also a thing, right? Find a way for the entire organization to work in the same direction to prevent a technology sprawl and make sure that code and processes are developed jointly across teams, and make sure that you have a rigid change management process in place. And lastly, ensuring buy-in from the technicians and engineers is important, to overcome any type of resistance. You can do this by emphasizing the collective and individual benefits that you will get out of the automation and working together. So by focusing on these areas, you can hopefully fairly smoothly navigate towards successful implementation of automation. And this is sort of to visualize, where you might be in, let's view this as a maturity ladder or stairs, as it actually is in this picture here. Based on our experience, most customers are placed in the lower steps, the ad hoc or the opportunistic stage, and the top tier, if you will, on step 5, called intelligent. That's most likely should be viewed perhaps like a future goal to some extent, because still to this day haven't seen anyone really getting this far. But try to identify where you are in this step. So if you look at the first ad hoc step, perhaps you have some scripts in place, usually performed by one or a few pioneers who has created some basic scripts to make parts of their work easier and quicker. But it's usually in the form of a single step and not part of a larger process, or it is part of a larger process, but just solving that specific small task, right? And it's probably in many cases not well documented or connected to any type of CMDB in the greater scheme of things. Then if you move up to the opportunistic, here we go, to the opportunistic step, it's still reactive. It's not measurable in any way, but at least it's project based, and it's with some kind of playbooks involved. At the third level, like the systematic step, as we call it, it's a lot more thought through. You're starting to get proactive and with a clear roadmap. It's orchestrated and measurable and offered as a service, at least internally. And then at the fourth step, when we start to say that automation is starting to be institutionalized, now you have a platform. It's reviewed by the whole organization. There is often a dedicated team that works with automation. It is policy-based and part of the organization's process development. There's an established framework for development of automation that is shared with the organization at large. The final step, again, more like a view ahead in the future a little bit. This is a desired goal or a vision, right? More than something that is attainable at the moment for most organizations. At this stage, you start using machine learning, AI, to create a self-learning platform that can make decisions without human intervention. So again, the realistic approach is to identify where your organization resides in this journey and how we can help you move up those stairs to the desired level you want to be at. The role will of course be different for all of you. So by all means, the poll should be open now as well. Let us know if our forecast is more or less accurate here. I expect most of organizations to identify themselves in 1, 2, and potentially 3 right, and there may still be a way to go here. So the poll is open for another half minute or so, and hopefully again, as mentioned, we're on the right track here. So moving along, how does Conscia, what's our mission, and how do we work with automation and IT as a whole? If you boil this statement down here, it's about getting to a place closer to self-driving IT. Get more out of the IT platforms that most organizations have already invested quite heavily in, and allow your staff to work more proactively and provide more value to the organization. Doing so by spending less time with repetitive and time-consuming work and troubleshooting, of course, right? So that's essentially, at the end of the day, realize untapped potential in your organization with the use of automation. Looking at what our vision around this is, so Conscia's vision around the self-driving IT is built upon 3 focus areas where all parts really are dependent or working alongside together, to achieve that end goal of a self-driving IT. We've invested heavily in all 3 areas here to provide a solid foundation to help our customers get there to the desired state, if you will. Solid expertise and services within cybersecurity, cutting edge networking solution with the best consultants in the business, if I'm allowed to boast a little bit, and a clear automation within cloud, or a clear offering within cloud and automation. And these areas jointly can hopefully get you a bit closer to that vision of a self-driving IT, where you can focus on providing business value instead of putting out fires. So we've identified 3 areas, or pillars, if you will, as it's visualized here, that need to be in place in order for successful automation to be introduced into an organization. A few years back, when we started this journey, we focused a lot on the technology part to the left, building a great platform and developing cool automation and scripts and so on. When we later on reached out to the customers we sold this to and asked, how things are going, how is the automation coming along? The answer was many times, it's probably working great. We're not really there using it, right? Because we don't dare to touch it. We don't know how it works. And this was clearly not a working business model. So we started developing the concept a bit more, adding some pillars, as you can see. So number 1, processes is key to work in a structured way towards common goals within the organization. Get a solid CMDB in place to help customers create stable processes around development and existing automation over time. But not least, to assist our customers in setting the culture in place and encourage different teams and departments to work together in order to make more gains from the time invested into this. Upskilling personnel and collaboration is a cornerstone in succeeding. It is absolutely essential for automation to be used after we are leaving the project as well, in order for our customers to be independent and self-sufficient in this. And what to further visualize the stages an organization is usually going through before reaching whatever your end goal around automation self-driving IT might be, it can be described, by this image you're seeing here, right? So it's usually started at the bottom left here, a team has, they identify some low-hanging fruit and some quick wins to help ease, the burden a little bit. As the team learns automation fundamentals, the benefits are reaped in the next stage, and replacing these repetitive tasks with scripts and so on. But at that point, usually, the teams hit a wall. It's a governance, CMDB-related issues, testing, integration work, and the team, must start to acquire developer skills to overcome that hurdle. This is a good point for our automation services to aid you a bit, to smoothen out that curve a little bit, so you can quickly get to the next stage, really. And that would be, at a point where you get new tools, knowledge, and the way of working. It may slow you down a bit, but the automation is executed safely and tested. So you're starting to mature, right? The team start to think like developers a bit more. And then at the end, the top right corner, that's when you finally arrived at the last part of the relentless work, of course, to improve. You have cross-functional teams that share experiences and so on, and that's when you start to see real jumps in productivity around this area. So that's how this could be visualized, if you will. So you may start to wonder, what about the operations team? What will they be doing once automation has been introduced? Staff that were busy performing admin tasks, for example, manually adding, removing firewall rules or VMs, configuring new devices, patchwork, upgrades, reactive troubleshooting, migrations, more or less everyday operations as we know it. This shift could, potentially unsettle some of the roles, you might think. But what we have been, seeing often is that these teams keep growing in numbers just to keep, the IT team afloat. While the teams grow, usually the executive board is expecting the team to be able to take on new projects because, you're more people now. They want you to develop the organization. But the pressure is still growing and the team is swamped with admin work. Many times, it can lead to burnout and, sick leaves and so on, worsening the situation even further, right? So removing some of that work and replacing it with, some new tasks after automation has been introduced, it can lead to a better work environment for the staff. Many times costly employees as well, right? That can be able to actually start developing the organization instead of putting out fires. Work more proactively, develop the automation, work across teams, improve the user experience, and some time to actually upskill and invest in your employees as well. So do more valuable work instead of repetitive tasks that, in addition, is more error prone usually, and leading again to more reactive work. So a vicious cycle, really. That's what we envision, at least. And as an example, right, what it many times looks like when a user developer is in need of a service from IT, in order to be able to create that value for the organization. At the bottom here, you have a fairly complex, bunch of things, such as sites and actual network devices, different connectivities, applications, and so on, that is managed by the entire IT organization. A person is eager to get going. So in large organizations, you usually start with ticket creation in an ITSM system or a web app in a smaller organization. It could perhaps be an email to the IT department or responsible person requesting a resource for developing a new app or service, or requesting new switches and APs for opening up a new branch, as an example. This is often, a rather manual process. There's usually a process in place, of course, but again, rather manual, slow, and costly. So you initiate a change request in order to change something in the infrastructure and on an application level as well, for that matter. It needs to pass through potentially an advisory board if it's a more complex request. If not, it may run a bit more smoothly, of course. If there's a cost associated to the change, approvals are required, and potentially a peer review, of course. So as illustrated here in the next step, usually, you could have, in large organizations, several teams that need to perform some work in order for this to actually take place, right? So it can involve, network teams, security teams, and so on. You can see them all there in the picture here. There's both fairly large risk of something going wrong, but also that the process is being held up by one or more teams or individuals because they simply don't have time to prioritize the case. Many errors that, in addition, is also caused by human error can be avoided by applying automation in a scenario like this. So after it's going through all of these teams, right, you have a CMDB update. It's usually required, right? You want to be able to know what assets are configured and available, and maintain this manually is, as many of you know, a very time-consuming task. Just a matter of keeping, say, control of license use or cloud environments that is constantly ticking away. These are costs that can be hard to track if the CMDB is failing, and we often see organizations paying for resources no longer in use for projects that is terminated, as an example, to exemplify this importance, right? Anyways, at one point you get to do a change close, right? It's needed in order to document if the change went well or not. At least in large organizations, this can be a very important step, not least in terms of audits, where you're required to have all the documentation in order. And finally, the ticket can be closed and the user have a new resource available. But then maybe a few weeks later, potentially with the request that has already sought for an alternative non-sanctioned path to get this up and running because they need it quicker, or may even, in worst case scenarios, have forgotten why they placed the order in the beginning, right? So thinking back at that previous slide, the users are really looking for a quicker and simpler way to request a resource or a change, right? Think of it as in this case, say we have Mr. Anderson. He has an idea or an intent, right? And in need of a resource in place to start developing this. He would ideally just want to go to a self-service portal, like you would normally in your private life as well, and choose, say, from a list of predefined services that he can order. Place that order. If it's, again, predefined and minimal, it may be even auto-approved. If not, a quick stop by someone to approve it with a given SLA. And then a script is automatically executing and testing and finally delivering the service to Mr. Anderson. All updated in the CMDB and ticket closed automatically, all within a matter of minutes rather than days and weeks I've even experienced months. So that's essentially what we're aiming for, right? How are we really delivering these automation services at Conscia? Our model of delivering these services is something we called driver, which is a value-based delivery, structured offering with billing based on value with a guaranteed outcome. The idea is that we as a provider of services not being rewarded monetary if a project is taking longer than expected, and you as a customer is knowing upfront what the cost will be. The whole concept is based around developing the project alongside your team to drive independency. A lot of focus is also placed helping your organization change the way you work towards a more agile way of working. By doing all of this, we share the risk, which drives all parties to get the best possible end result as efficiently as possible. We've chosen to split the phases of a project into day 0, day 1, and day 2. Day 0 is about setting the vision, review your resources such as infrastructure, etc. Make sure that everything is in place in order to get started in developing use cases in day 1. In day 1, the collaborative work is really intensifying around getting actual automation in place. And we also work a lot with training and upskilling your organization when needed in order for you to be ready to take over once this stage is getting to an end. Day 2 is more of, it's an added layer of support, also provided just like the previous stages at a fixed price. And it's to help to provide you with some experts on demand if you want to keep developing some more complex cases. You might need some continuous upskilling, new members joining the team, right? Or bug fixing and maintenance fixes on the existing automations in place. It's an optional step, of course, but in larger projects, we've definitely seen a great value in this. So our solution is then built around a framework, if you will. We have developed, so we can connect some kind of a ordering portal, whether it be ITSM or web app or some other shape or form, to a very complex infrastructure at the bottom, right? The framework handles change management, which is often, as mentioned before, forgotten or not prioritized, leading to difficulties in getting automation into actual production. It is also providing, workflow execution, and it's all built upon open source tooling. We can, of course, also adapt to existing tools already being used in your organization. But, the framework, without going into too much detail, is based on creating reusable components that are, modular, hence being able to reuse existing code and automation in future use cases as well. So if you need whatever you developed with us in an early stage may be adapted and applied in a different use case at a later stage. That's the whole idea around it. So we can be a bit clever about that. That's a little bit about how we at Conscia deliver these services. So I've also promised to go over a little bit about a business case, and this is a financial institution that we helped with a project around really digital business resilience at big or at large through the use of automation. Give you a bit of a background around this. They embarked on this journey a few years back but I guess a lot of it is still relevant today, right? So, the financial sector's undergoing, fundamental changes with digitalization, automation, and disintermediation, as the main drivers for altering products and service deliveries. They were facing several challenges in its day-to-day operational continuity. And past network outages, security incidents that led to both, serious financial and reputational losses. And there were also, challenges in driving the necessity to identify and apply new ways of performing and delivering services, both internal and external customers. So this really called for an important shift in network design and governance. So moving away from traditional ways of designing and manually then managing network infrastructure towards more a software driven, you could say, cloud-based practices that increase the cost efficiency, simplicity, and automation. Another big topic, of course, was regulations. All financial institutions need to provide adaptive and agile reporting, including the ability to drill down to the lowest level of granularity within shorter time frames and with increased frequency. And we see in a lot of other areas as well now with the NIS2 initiative and so on, that there are more institutions than just the financial sector that are struck by more and more of these demands, right? And then they also had changing customer behavior, more tech savvy consumers that have different expectations, for greater convenience in service offerings and tailored products, and that's really at odds with traditional operating models in the banking industry. So the customer decided from a top level that their business resiliency was too low and needed to increase somehow. And it was related to vendor market. We had pandemics back in that time, vulnerabilities, innovation demands, and the outages also mentioned. Again, suffering from these outages and a problem with the stability in their overall organization, they identified automation as a key to get to sorts with these problems. The two major factors exposing the customer to risk and potential problems were really underinvestment in the network and the legacy network design, not really up to speed with what they were needing for the future. And in short, those major challenges were really blast radius. Failure of one component can bring the whole infrastructure down, to a grinding halt, and a lack of automation with manual operations and maintenance leading to more manual errors and sluggish operations and growing costs. Obviously, they also reviewed technological concerns like the network design issues, insufficient segmentation, lack of transparency, and on an organizational and process-related level, they were a siloed organization. They had no common way of working, different teams working in completely different directions sometimes, and a lack of governance processes and standardization policies, constant firefighting, and lack of DevOps competencies. So the organization as a whole, they identified 5 strategic goals published in their annual report, that the entire, not only the IT department, but the entire organization was striving towards attaining these 5 goals. Anything that demands that technology is used to be more prepared for unforeseen events, which put cybersecurity as a top priority. And translating business resiliency into the technologies, it's not an easy task when evaluating what the IT department could do to satisfy this. Again, as mentioned, automation came out as the main thing they needed to look on to get to swords with these issues that they could have an effect on. And an RFP was issued, which we managed to win, and here we are explaining what we tried to accomplish here then. So along the way, we needed to figure out how to automate their network security in a secure, scalable, and consumable manner. This certainly is reflected, again, in the overall strategic goals more than in one way. Increasing the business resiliency ties into most of these, where availability and regulatory compliance is obvious ones. So this was where we started out. A fresh project with a clear mission and a customer in need of a close partnership, where they sought guidance and support around IT infrastructure automation in general and security in particular. And that's where our focus relies. That every journey should start with the user experience and business value in mind, if you will. So looking a bit closer to visualize the journey that we and the customer embarked on, tying back to our delivery model that I described earlier. This is really what we did, right? We got to the point here at the far left, to getting a bit more oriented with the situation, and that's what they did in the RFP process. Walking through the project, setting the strategy, defining goals, and assigning a value to the automation to gain internal sponsorship. The customer performed a thorough analysis of past incidents. The root cause was clear, and early on, as mentioned before, automation was identified as the necessary step to take in order to improve the entire IT delivery, not only from a business continuity perspective, but also by aiding business development at large. In addition, the customer conveyed, also a thorough investigation into what existing automation solutions and competences and other reasons that were already available. Procuring a service, on a long-term commitment and a collaborative approach, developing the entire project jointly, that could be fairly different from, acquiring hardware, for example. So they had to think about how do we actually, put out a valuable RFP so that we get the type of collaboration we're requiring, right? It allowed for an adaptive, development process while maintaining full control of time and cost in the way that we deliver these services. And it's all, value-based pricing, sprint-based delivery, and use case oriented. So we start to work properly, from the beginning, if you will. And to find some use cases that could be easily quantified in terms of the improvements made, whether it be, less downtime, faster updates and changes, less manual work, monetary savings, and again, joint development and knowledge sharing, so that the customer could actually be, self-sufficient at the end of the project. And Conscia and the customer address these challenges by laying a foundation, addressing technology, processes, and people, just as described earlier as well. And we got to day zero. To give you an idea of what that could look like, right? So in the first few weeks, the Conscia team got up to speed and received access to the predetermined materials. improved an understanding of the customer's operations, necessary changes for automation to function with regards to existing routines, including routine adjustments and change management processes. They met with neighboring teams, customers, and other key stakeholders that would be affected by these changes. And after several interviews, the Conscia team compiled a report to confirm their understanding of the situation. Design sessions were organized with relevant parties to identify and discuss and test and finally implement these changes needed to accommodate the upcoming automation work. The goal of this phase was to make sure that together with the customer and their supporting system and IT platform, that we would be ready to enter into a joint development phase at a later stage, but also to prepare for a project stage in which the actual value bringing of infrastructure automations would be built. And that's again in day one then. So following day zero, we were ready to enter into the development phase for each automation use case that we developed alongside with the customer. This would be, value-adding automation routines, fulfilling particular self-service orders towards the infrastructure. For example, requesting a new firewall policy. For each development process on such an automation, a standard recipe was followed by maintaining discussion with relevant stakeholders on matters such as what is to be configured. So that is discussions on domain-specific architecture. What data would be required? Who would be using the automation? What type of documentation should be generated following the execution of such an automation? And where would it be kept? Questions again revolving CMDB. What orchestration tool should be used for a specific implementation? Maybe the team providing the firewall service has a preference on a certain automation tool. I briefly also showed in a slide before, something we call an architecture advisory. In order to amplify the ability to identify what automations to develop and when to do so, Conscia provided, this project with an additional service called architecture advisory service. Early on, we realized that a good understanding of the project's overall implementation plan is crucial. Gathering the required information and facilitating cross-team discussions between relevant experts and stakeholders is essential to succeed with a project of this magnitude. So the advisory service was delivered by a senior architecture provided by Conscia, together with the implementation of a recurring forum with relevant parties. In summary, providing a function for owning and prioritizing the backlog enabled the customer to make educated and informed decisions around the entire project scope and what to focus on at any given time. So what did we, now when we reached, I would say, day two services, supporting them on their journey ahead, what did we really, accomplish, right? Stability was the most important end result of the project. Automation has improved the entire IT delivery, and this is, of course, providing huge business value. Secondly, the customer has been able to offer these improvements to the entire organization as consumable services that are easily accessible to all. And thirdly, and very important, is that it has helped the customer tremendously in maintaining compliance and to adhere to regulations in a safer, but also a lot faster manner. An added gain from applying, a modern way of working and with being at the frontier of technology in general is that it has helped the customer to attract new and, the right talent, because this is something that skilled IT professionals want, to be a part of. And here, to get some idea of what we actually did, right? You can see some great percentages here off the chart, with savings on actual examples of what was automated. And without going into details because of time, what was really interesting was, when we were able to really combine these different automations into one combined and orderable service and flow in the organization. So being able for users to go in, and order a service like this, where you can combine again, going back to the modularity of the concept that we're offering, right? This is really enabling for faster innovation, improved user experience. It's all self-service. You have the cost tracking, and again, since these are pre-approved changes in the system, it runs smoothly and quickly. And that's really where the magic happens, rather than, it's obviously nice to see huge numbers in terms of how much time you have saved, and time is money and all of that stuff. But I would say this is where the magic happens. So again, in summary, this was obviously not done in an afternoon. It's a project that requires efforts from various parts of the organization. But if a large financial institution can do this, I'm sure so can you who listens in today. More importantly, the business outcomes are quite interesting, especially when it comes to the less obvious ones, such as how it's insanely large amounts of hours that can be saved in regulatory and compliance work through pointing at a database instead of auditing hundreds or thousands of device configurations. So looking back at remembering the strategic goals I mentioned a few slides back, that the customer stated in their annual report, with a modern way of working, they are now able to engage their employees more. Regulatory compliance has improved. Availability goes hand in hand with a system doing the anticipated thing and testing it instead of hoping for a human not doing something wrong, which again is human to do. And being available and modern, of course, reflects in the trust and customer satisfaction. So I would say, out of the organization's 5 strategic goals, for the IT department through automation being able to address 4 out of 5 of those main topics is a pretty strong argument, I would say, for them to get executive buy-in for this project. So again, looking at a familiar slide, how can you embark on this journey if you haven't really started, or if you're stuck somehow? Instead of starting out with an RFP, if you haven't really reached that stage, I would look at how can you get started on the journey and get oriented in what you need and what you actually would like to achieve. I would say the first step that we could offer to get the ball rolling is that we've created a service called Automation Readiness Analysis. And again, fixed price offering, which consists really of 3 workshops covering, setting the vision, drivers for automation, stakeholder mapping, and outcome expectations. Followed, by a readiness session where we review the infrastructure, skills, and competencies, and get an idea of processes in place and how they would work. And lastly, then a session of setting an actual action plan in place for how your organization can take the next step. And after that last session, we at Conscia will put together, a document outlining what we've accomplished in the workshop and what that plan actually looks like. So you have a piece of paper, and hopefully by that time you have a pretty good confidence in that we would be that right partner for you to hold your hand on embarking on that journey further on. And remember that again, we will offer to the attendee with the best motivation around what you're looking to accomplish through automation, a light 2-hour workshop free of charge if you provide that evaluation at the end of the call. But in summary, because we're getting close to the end here, what to think about. I'll try to put down 7 quick steps on how to get started. Start with a clear automation strategy. What would you as an organization look to accomplish? Set well-defined goals on what you're looking to accomplish, and that ties back down to point 7 that we'll get to, that you actually have some, make sure you have also measurable find good ways on how to measure and track the results you get out of this, so that you have not only for your own sake to make sure you're making progress, but usually there might be some other people in the organization that is expecting some kind of result of the time spent on a project like this. So that's also something you should have on your checklist. Establish cross-functional automation teams and incentivize your teams and individuals to identify and come up with new ideas on what could what kind of automation could be introduced to help the business, and schedule regular automation focused team meetings. We many times see that if you try to bring a topic like this up in your everyday stand-up calls where you have tons of things to discuss, it might not be enough to actually too many other things is taking focus away from having some valuable and well thought out discussions around this. And again, obviously have some kind of a test environment where you can try these new automations out before deploying them. That's also something that should hopefully be in place, but I'm sure a lot of you have your some kind of demo lab environment ready to get started. But that's at least a bit of a checklist, and we have now reached the end, I would say. Business resiliency or any other area in need of automation is something that we can help you with your respective organization. We have described how we solved some pretty tricky problems in a rather elegant manner, I'd say. A lot of the learnings we have acquired over the years from these kind of projects we've already had can easily be applied and amended to help your organizations get going in this journey. It's safe to say that these matters are usually not quick fixes, but I hope we can get you some quick wins along the way for sure, and make sure that the work is getting started, at least, no matter if the size of the project is as large as I described in the business case, or if it's a lot more moderate in size. I'm hoping that we can help you regardless. And so if you are interested, my contact details, I'm sure they will be shared. I'm happy to discuss this further with you, and if you already have other contacts within Conscia, grab them, reach out to them and say, if you're interested in having a more deep down one-to-one session around this and discuss how we can help you get going, we're happy to do so. And that, I believe, concludes today's session. Hopefully have a few minutes to spare if there's anything Any questions that need immediate attention? What about convincing parts of the organization and leadership who are hesitant towards automation? Well, vested in old school manual operations work. There may be some parts of the organization who view automation as opposed to control and governance, whereas my view is that automation would increase control. I'm guessing from that question, if I interpret it correctly, that you're looking for arguments on how to convince hesitant leadership, that automation is actually providing, better control as a view, opposed to the opposite. Hopefully, I don't know when this arrived pretty early on. Hopefully, some of the parts I covered have actually addressed this a little bit. But I would say that we could easily have a discussion with that those leaders in that organization and show them how this in fact would be helping you a lot in gaining control and governance. You're not giving it away, you're just doing it differently and less manual. I would say many times, if it's done correctly and with proper, control of CMDB and so on, you have it's definitely combinable with agile development of code if you actually track it properly and you have a safe environment to do so and test and try it before putting it into production. But I may have missed the goal. If not, we can have a one-on-one on that as well. Let's see here. See, what kind of technology do you use for the automation and the framework? If we're looking at the DX framework, it's mostly consisting, as I mentioned, of open source tooling. We're adaptable to what you have in use today, but yeah, sure. I mean, we have the usual tools that a lot of organizations out there use today, with the use of Ansible, Git, and Netbox, and so on. It's usually a combination of different tools, and depending a little bit on how your organization is put together and what you prefer to use. But the overall framework we worked is supposed to be open and modular, and whatever has an open API is something that we can work with the basis that we've put together, if that makes sense. In org, how about working collaboratively with in-org developer resources? Is there a model for this, a preferred tech stack or similar? Yeah, again, not knowing if I'm getting the full essence of the question, but yes, I mean, what I describe and what part of, say, day zero would be to sit down and discuss with different key stakeholders in the organization, and that would also be DevOps teams, right, on how we can work with this automation collaboratively and in a joint way, so that we don't want developers, software developers, or DevOps team and so on to work in a completely different way than the network team, and for you guys to work in a more joint and similar way, so that you're pulling in the same direction. That's the, I would say, the entire model that we offer. And again, preferred tech stack, we can have some preferences around that, but again, it boils down to what you have, and we need to accommodate what you have invested in. Then, in order to get a solid and proper automation in place, we may in early stages of a project realize or identify that a few things need to be changed, tweaked, and altered in order for this to be able to run smoothly across the entire infrastructure, as an example. Thanks everyone for spending time with us today. It's much appreciated.